Good morning. Honourable members of the committee and other honourable members present, Deputy Minister, Acting DG, delegations from the Department of Public Service and Administration, the National Treasury, and the Presidency, and members of the media, welcome all, support staff. Let me just take this opportunity to say that thank you for your patience that we could start 10 minutes later. It's appreciated. But before we proceed with the business of the day, we must please just look at the agenda. Masi, if we can just flight the agenda, it is being flighted. Members, you'll see that we are scheduled to run up to 1 o'clock. Before us today is a briefing by the DPSA, the National Treasury, and the Presidency, the Socio-Economic Impact Assessment System, specifically regarding the Insourcing Bill. That's our main agenda points. We will have those three presentations from those three entities, whereafter at 11:30 we will do our deliberations, and at 1 o'clock we will adjourn. Can I please see any hands? A mover for the adoption of the agenda. Honourable Langa.
Thank you very much, Chair, and greetings to you, the DM, the acting DG and DPSA, the National Treasury, and portfolio committee members, and all protocol observed. Chair, I move for the adoption of the agenda before us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I have a seconder? Obakaba.
Morning to you, Chair, and morning to the honorable members. All protocol is observed. I rise to second the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you very much, members. Therewith, our agenda has been duly adopted for the day, and we can move on to the second agenda item, which is apologies. We have received an apology from Minister Buthelezi at the DPSA. Also, Minister Nchaveni from the Presidency have also noted their apologies. And then members of the committee who we have received apologies from is Honourable Mkunu, Mtolo, and Tekana. Members, are there any other apologies that need to be noted? That looks like that deals with item number 2. Thank you very much. Members, as we move on to the next item, let me just make some brief opening remarks, then give the DM an opportunity to make her remarks as well. So on the 4th of March 2026, so this year, the committee received a presentation from Honourable Muatwe introducing the Insourcing Bill to members of this committee. So Rule 2864E mandates the committee to provide the relevant department within the National Executive Authority with a sufficient opportunity to make submissions on the objects and on the particulars of this bill. And during the above-mentioned committee meeting, members were advised that the next step in the process would be to invite the Department of Public Service and Administration, together with the Presidency Socio-Economic Impact Assessment Unit and National Treasury, to make their submissions on the bill. The bill has direct implications for these institutions, and it is therefore critically important for the committee to receive their views, inputs, and comments to assist it in navigating the processing of this important piece of legislation. The departments will provide the committee with a comprehensive assessment of the potential advantages and disadvantages of the bill. Their submissions will be valuable in informing the committee's deliberations and considering the legislation in future. But with those remarks, I would just like to invite the Deputy Minister to please make some opening remarks as well. Deputy Minister, please, you have the floor. Thank you.
Chairperson, thank you very much, and good morning to yourself, Chair, the Deputy Chief Whip, and members of the Portfolio Committee who are here. But also just to join you, Chair, in saying today we have a formidable team from government side, from DPSA with the ADG, will be led by Masi Chaba to make a presentation from our side. From Treasury, we have Renisha, and then from the Presidency, we'll have Bulani also presenting. So this is the team. Of course, we have come a long way with the Portfolio Committee on this matter. I wouldn't want us to waste time, but allow them to present, guided by you as per the agenda, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Members, I see point number 3 on our adopted agenda is actually the consideration and adoption of the previous committee minutes. I'm going to ask members, if there are no objections, that we first move past this point. We can do that at the end of the meeting. I think it is more important that we move straight to the presentations and the deliberations. Is there any objection to that? Thank you, members. We then move straight to point number 4, and the first briefing is by the Department of Public Service and Administration.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to you, Chair, and good morning to the honourable members, as well as my fellow colleagues from the different departments. I will be taking you through the presentation from the Department of Public Service and Administration.
Would you just please introduce yourself as well? Thank you.
Let me move closer. Okay. My name is Masichaba Ledwaba, and I work at the DPSA in Legal Services. Thank you. That is the outline of the presentation. The introduction. The bill was introduced by the EFF during July of 2025, and it was sent to the department to make inputs with regard to the impact on the constitutional and legislative mandate of the Minister for Public Service and Administration, as well as the impact on the public service at large, and to provide a briefing to the Portfolio Committee. The objects of the bill are to provide for insourcing of services required daily by organs of state, and to address the need for a legislative framework that will supplement the current one that is in place for outsourcing of services, to address the administrative problems created by outsourcing, corruption in the tender process, as well as to enhance accountability in service delivery, as well as to put an end to the exploitation of workers that work for these private contractors. The high-level analysis of the bill. The bill expands the minister's mandate beyond what is said in Section 195 of the Constitution, read with Section 197 of the Constitution, as it speaks to the term of organ of state, which goes beyond the public service. The bill also seeks to expand the legislative mandate that is set out in Section 3(1) of the Public Service Act, in terms of which the minister may establish norms and standards. The bill further expands the legislative mandate that is provided for in the PAMA Act in Section 16(1). The bill is in conflict with Section 217 of the Constitution, which sets out the principles of procurement, which is the fair, equitable, transparent, and competitive and cost-effective procedure. And we also found that if insourcing results in an increase on the fiscal burden without efficiency, then the department may face legal challenge based on the principle of rationality. Then the impact on the Public Service Act. The bill aims to strengthen the internal capacity of government by reducing reliance on outsourcing. However, it obliges the organs of state to absorb these workers from private contractors, which goes against the principles of recruitment that are set out in the Public Service Act, as well as the regulations, that when there's a vacant post, it has to be advertised and it must go through the different procedures. The bill further seeks to expand the role of the NSG, which is to professionalize the public service, and then now to divert that to training newly insourced workers. With respect to IT services, the procurement of IT services in the public service is governed by the SETA Act, and the bill proposes a parallel procurement system, which may pose such challenges in operations. When you look at the compliance aspect, the bill should be subject to SEIAS and the financial impact assessment, which are presentations that will be done by our colleagues from the Presidency and National Treasury. And furthermore, when you look at anti-corruption, the work on anti-corruption is sufficiently guided by the Public Service Act, the Public Service Regulations, the PALMA, and other anti-corruption legislation. And there might not be a need for additional legislation to govern that aspect. And when you look at the operations management part, the bill seeks to override the discretion of EAs to determine the most efficient service delivery model for their different departments, which will then shift government from a flexible service delivery model to an internal service provision, which will in turn mean that departments must now redesign their operating models to manage these previously outsourced services, which will then require internal capacity, redesigning workflows to clarify roles, revising standard operating procedures, updating budgets, performance management, and monitoring to support these internal functions. The bill does not include any detailed impact analysis on the wage bill, and the minister can be held accountable if he approves an unfunded mandate. The bill duplicates and overlaps with constitution and legislative mandates of executive authorities, several legislations such as the Public Service Act and the PFMA and others. Now, in order to form a policy position on the bill, one needs to understand the outsourcing environment. So an environmental scan was done, although it was limited to the national and provincial spheres of government. What was found in the scan can also be attributed to what is happening in the local government. So then, on assessment, it was found that the expenditure of national and provincial administration in outsourcing during the financial year of 2023-24 was around 18 billion. And then during 2024 and 2025 financial year, it was around 17 billion. And then it is expected to reach about 18 billion in 2025 and 2026 financial year. And then according to AXA, the institutions that were audited had materially non-compliant with legislation during 2023 and 2024, which resulted in an irregular expenditure of 406 billion rands. And that amount, that irregular expenditure, was attributed to the issue of procurement shortcomings and the reliance on service providers. And furthermore, the SIU found that the culprits in procurement are found to be ESCOM, Gauteng Education, as well as the Department of Correctional Services. So in South Africa, the workers that are hired by the private contractors earn a minimum wage, which is about just over 5,000 rands, while employees that are in the public service at salary level 2 get about 12,000 rand per month, and including the benefits. So on assessment of the bill, it does address the real and constitutionally significant issues, but the costs that will be required to cover the listed services that are suggested to be insourced by organs of state is fiscally unfeasible, and operationally it might be unachievable as the bill is drafted in its current state. So the key findings from this environmental scan is found that the national and provincial outsourcing spent about 18 billion. That is now excluding the local government. But 71% of that amount, of this 18 billion, was spent largely at provinces. The 406 billion irregular expenditure over 5 years was as a result of outsourcing. And also the exploitation of workers. You can see from the gaps in the salaries as well as a lack of benefits from the workers that are employed by the private contractors. And then also there was consideration of internationally what is happening, how's the climate, how other countries are doing it, and if it was successful. So then there's research from UCT which stated that around 35 to 41% of the costs will be raised if you are aiming to insource. And then in South Korea, about 196,000 workers were converted, and after 5 years, they were able to make savings of 41.5 million. So then if we are saying we are fully insourcing, it would cost about 30 to 50 billion rands per annum. And this is, we look at that against the wage bill for 2026-2027 financial year of more than 850 billion. And then we also conducted a clause-by-clause analysis of the bill. From clause, and then these are all the concerns that we noted when we did the clause-by-clause. From clause 1, which deals with the definitions of the bill. The word minister, it means the minister responsible for public service and administration. Like we've stated before, this now expands the mandate of the minister beyond public service, which is national and provincial government, and beyond public administration, which includes the local government sphere. And also we go to clause 2.1, which sets out the application of the Act, and it applies to all organs of state. And then clause 2.2 provides that the Act applies to, it lists the services that the Act applies to. Then we found that the minister is responsible only up until the 3 spheres of government and not organs of state, and it cannot include public entities and constitutional institutions and all that. That is beyond the 3 spheres of government. So that will pose a problem. And also we found that the bill does not differentiate between the core functions, which are the functions that enable service delivery, and the non-core functions, which is the support and administrative part of it. IT services, this clause is far-reaching when it relates to IT services, because when a study was done which states that out of 1.2 million public servants, only 4,500 were working in IT, meaning only that amount have the skills, IT skills. The DPSA tracks expenditure by the public service, the IT expenditure by the public service, and this currently stands at 20 billion per annum. Between 5 and 10% of this can be attributed to outsourced human resources. The provision of IT services, which is largely done through SETA, was moved from the DPSA to the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. This was to put them together because they're dealing with the same thing. The Public Procurement Act creates a unified framework for state procurement, and it replaces having different laws regulating the same thing. So the bill may contradict and create a parallel regime with the Public Procurement Act. The SETA Act provides a detailed guidance in as far as acquisition and management of IT services is concerned. Consequently, there will come a point where you have to answer the question, which law applies, which law takes precedence, because there's so many laws governing the same thing. Clause 2.3 provides that in the event of inconsistencies between the Act and any other legislation, this Act will prevail. This bill overlaps and duplicates the constitutional mandates of other authorities and also other legislation. This will lead to legal uncertainty in the application of the Act, and it will even open up the department to litigation. The common law principle of interpretation will have to be applied in determining which of these legislation will prevail. Clause 3 states that the minister must develop an insourcing policy which complies with basic values and principles of governing values and promotes high ethical standards and prohibits fraud and corruption. The bill duplicates and overlaps the legislative and constitutional mandate of the minister and other executive authorities. And in terms of Section 3.1 of the Public Service Act, the minister issues norms and standards. The requirement for an insourcing policy and supporting regulations duplicates the DPSA's existing policy instruments on organizational design and service delivery models, HR planning, and employment management. Clause 3 of the bill effectively curtails the constitutional provisions relating to procurement in terms of Section 217. Clause 3A of the bill seeks to duplicate the constitutional and legislative mandate of the minister, and Clause 3D of the bill makes provision for insourcing policy to set a criteria when service is being outsourced. The department is not in a legal position to determine such criteria, and it would be now tantamount to mandate creep of the Minister of Finance. Clause 3E and F require organs of state to conduct annual skills audit, maintain comprehensive skills databases of all employees, while Clause 5.3a provides that both organs of state before an organ of state outsources a service, the accounting officer must confirm that the service cannot be provided internally, taking into consideration a skills database. For this to be successfully implemented, departments and organs of state must ensure that they establish and maintain an up-to-date database of skills of all employees in their institutions and conduct a comprehensive skills audit. The public service employs individuals in different jobs within the 9 occupational categories defined in the Occupational Dictionary. These jobs are characterized broadly into support, production personnel, and supervisors. The most prominent categories of workers that can be insourced are within the support, production, and professional categories. And the jobs that can be insourced in the support category may include the following: gardening, cleaners, call center, data capturing, and administrative support. It might also be feasible to insource the following professional jobs: forensic investigators, auditors, maintenance and infrastructure support, engineering, HR and recruitment, and healthcare support services. Clause 4 provides that the accounting officer of an organ of state has an obligation to implement the insourcing policy developed by the minister. The DPSA already expands extensive human and financial resources to monitor and evaluate policy implementation by national and provincial departments, and the proposed Clause 4 will add another layer of monitoring and evaluation for which the department is not equipped to do, and given the scope of application of the Act that goes beyond that addresses organs of state, which is beyond public service. The Public Service Act and the Public Service Regulations, as well as PAMA, provide for the secondment of employees to enhance the capacity building, skills transfer across 3 spheres of government. Not all organs of state are obliged to implement the minister's instruments. Clause 5 places an obligation on organs of state to insource all services, It also sets out the criteria which must be followed before any service can be outsourced. The bill's mandatory skills transfer and training provisions duplicate obligations under the Skills Development Act, the Public Service Sector Education and Training Authority frameworks, work skills plans, as well as department training strategies. And to give effect to Clause 5.3a of the bill, departments will have to ensure that they establish and maintain up-to-date databases of the skills of all employees. It cannot be expected of employees to undertake additional functions to form part of their job descriptions in order to make sure that the bill is being complied with. Clause 6 permits an organ of state to apply for an exemption from any provisions of the Act under certain circumstances. This clause appears to replicate Treasury Regulation 16A 6.4 of the Treasury Regulations, where the departments and trading entities and public entities are allowed a deviation by an accounting officer from inviting competitive bids in cases of emergency or sole supplier status. Clause 7 places an obligation on the minister to table a report to the National Assembly of all the projects all the projects where services could not be sourced, and state reasons why these services could not be sourced. This clause is adding an administrative burden on the minister and will therefore require internal capacity within the department. Clause 7 provides for transitional provisions and provides that where there is a contract in place for services before the commencement of the Act, and if the contract has not yet come to an end, those services must be provided until the end of the contract. Furthermore, Clause 9 provides that all contracts already concluded and tenders already advertised before the commencement of the Act must be continued with, provided that where a contract exceeds 12 months, the service provider must be requested, where legally and practically possible, to provide training for identified by the organs of state. This clause appears to oblige organs of state to absorb workers from private companies, and this is now in conflict with the Public Service Act and regulations with regard to recruitment in the public service. Our observation from the bill: while the intent is to strengthen accountability, provide decent work for the workers that are employed in these private contractors, and build internal state capacity as it is aligned with the government priorities, the bill introduces parallel policy, regulatory and reporting mechanisms in areas that are already being regulated by other frameworks and legislation. The public service already operates under an established architecture where everything is being regulated. When you look at financial management, skills development, and procurement controls, those are already in place. The core institutional challenge lies in strengthening, implementing discipline, executive accountability, and coordinated enforcement within these existing frameworks. The bill will expand the DPSA policy mandate. It will increase compliance and reporting burdens and fragment governance oversight without showing any added value. It will also require significant coordination with National Treasury and other central institutions, which can be more achieved through a strengthened intergovernmental mechanism. A more sustainable approach would focus on reinforcing and tightening demand management controls and strengthening consequence management and optimizing human resource management. In summary, the bill introduces additional regulatory layers, reporting obligations, approval processes within an already comprehensive governance mechanism. The proposals are as follows. The minister may consider supporting the bill, subject to the following proposals. When we looked at the definitions, where it says the definition, the minister means the minister of responsible for public service and administration. We might it might be it might be better to consider to include the Minister of Finance to remedy the issue of the constitutional conflict as well as the issue of expanding the constitutional mandate of the minister. As well as when you look at the definition of organ of state being used in the bill, it extends to public entities, and the minister responsible for public service and administration does not have a mandate over public entities. The mandate is limited by the Public Service Act and the PAMA up to local government. Impact on other legislation. The impact of the bill on other legislation should be scrutinized so that any constitutional and legislative mandate creeps is avoided. And parallel and contradictory regulatory services regarding procurement services such as IT are avoided. And also interpretational issues as to which legislation will prevail in the event of inconsistencies are circumvented. In employment practices, any insourcing mechanism must remain aligned to the Public Service Act and the Public Service Regulations. Therefore, meaning that the issue of absorbing these workers of private contractors, it cannot work. The PFMA and procurement framework should continue to allow departments to procure specialized temporary and project-based services, and the bill may be supported in principle subject to clear alignment with Public Service Employment Framework, the PFMA funded organizational structures, lawful recruitment processes, and respective procurement and treasury mandates. And then the outcomes of the environmental scan. Yes, after the assessment of the bill, it does address real and significant issues, but it might not be physically feasible, and operationally it might be difficult. So a phased approach is recommended, where the project starts by insourcing, let's say, security and cleaning services, and then moving on to other services, provided that the costs of the insourcing are acceptable to Treasury and that there is capacity within the DPSA to do all the monitoring. The policy framework of the bill should be implemented in full. The skills audit and reporting requirements should be staged and sequenced, and the obligation to insource made reversible. And this is the proposed phased approach. Phase 1, financial year 2026-2027. First, establish a policy framework, skills database, and contractor margin audit, and then start with the security and cleaning services. Phase 2, which will be during 2027 and 2028 financial year to 2028-2029 financial year, expand into insourcing other services such as catering, gardening, and general maintenance. This is obviously subject to Treasury costing and departmental capacity to monitor. Phase 3, which will be from 2029-2030 financial year onward, will extend to other services such as IT, transport, and administrative support. And IT and auditing services should not be included due to specialist skills requirements. And the last proposal is that the minister responsible for public service and administration initiates and leads a white paper process to look at the review of the employment policies and practices in broader public administration. That is the presentation from the DPSA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the second presentation by National Treasury. DM?
All the presentations will be, they are there electronically. Maybe you'll share with the new members today from the committee.
I'm not following, Deputy Minister.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
the presentations, all presentations that are made today, we'll make sure that they are shared with your office. I know they may have arrived before, some, so that other members, temporary members that I see in the committee today, temporary members, and I do that with respect. The Deputy Chief Whip is here, visiting members.
Okay, no, I thank you, Deputy Minister. I 100% understand. I will ask the staff to make sure that the presentations are delivered to the co-opted members. Welcome. I hope you enjoy your stint here in public service and administration. Yes. Treasury, you are most welcome to proceed. Thank you. Please introduce yourself as well and just explain what your role is. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning to the members of the committee.
Closer to you, Anusha.
Renisha. Good morning, DM, and good morning to the DGs and colleagues that are present here today. My name is Renisha Naidu, and I am the Chief Director at the National Treasury, responsible for, this is a very long title, but it's Public Sector Governance and Procurement Legislative Services. I understand that our ministry has tendered an apology for our minister, and I'm also given to understand that our minister has submitted a letter that will consolidate the inputs that we are presenting today to the chair of the committee. So with that background, Chair, thank you for allowing the National Treasury to participate in this process. I'm going to try not to repeat some of the areas that the DPSA has already spoken to. But the context of this bill is the National Treasury again welcomes the opportunity to participate in this process, and we have looked at this bill and assessed this bill and its broader implications insofar as the National Treasury's mandate is concerned. We have understood this bill to impact public administration, labor relations, procurement, fiscal sustainability, and economic transformation. The briefing that we present today is regarding the fiscal sustainability, the operational feasibility, and the economic outcomes that this bill envisages. We have broken down our presentation into 6 areas that we would like to talk to, and that's in respect of the policy that has been identified, the legislative landscape, the state's ability to deliver these services that are identified, economic transformation and development agenda of the state's macroeconomic strategy, as well as the broader financial implications of the bill. The main objectives the DPSA has spoken to, but in broad strokes, it identifies certain services that are required to be, as a mandatory obligation on the state, to be insourced. It also identifies problems created by outsourcing services, corruption in tender systems, and also the enhancement of accountability in delivering services by the state. To define insourcing, insourcing is defined in the bill itself, and it means to use by an organ of state its own resources or personnel needed by that organ of state for the services that are identified in the bill. To provide for a limitation on outsourcing of services and to promote job security. So that is the main ethos of what the bill seeks to achieve. In terms of a policy statement, we have recently recognized the President's statements to Parliament, where the President identified that outsourcing is a problem in government, especially where functions that belong in government have been outsourced. The phenomenon of outsourcing, as alluded to by the President, was also alluded to be reversed and arrested, and that government should only outsource that which it cannot do itself more cost effectively. We recognize also that insourcing provides protection to employees and ensures decent jobs to be provided by the state. The policy further supports the strengthening of state capacity and accountability. The state, however, as it does so and as it considers insourcing, it must consider and be mindful not to adopt blanket policies without considering the costing and the sustainability of those proposals. We must also, as the state, balance insourcing goals with fiscal discipline, service delivery, and the state's other obligations, including that of promoting economic development. We must also ensure that the services that are required to be outsourced are capable of being outsourced. In terms of the legislative landscape, and again, the DPSA has dealt with extensively on what legislation and employment legislation specifically exists within the public service and the public administration. But it's important to note that additionally, there's the Labor Relations Act, which was amended in 2014. And one of the main principles adopted in that 2014 amendment was purely to deal with the protection of vulnerable workers. And if you look at Section 198A and 198B of the Labor Relations Act, it was included to ensure that employees who are employed on a temporary, fixed-term, or part-time role are not exploited and are treated fairly in comparison with permanent employees. Those particular sections also dealt with temporary employment services and the obligations of employing employees through temporary employment services. In terms of Section 217, there is also a responsibility that when organs of state contract for goods and services, it must do so in accordance with a system that is fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. The Public Procurement Act was recently passed by Parliament. It is still one of the pieces of legislation that the National Treasury is working to implement, and one of the aims of this particular piece of legislation was to ensure that in public procurement we are able to combat and eradicate and erode corrupt activities and corruption in procurement. Therefore, when the bill speaks to corruption being what the bill seeks to achieve or combat, our view is that we can do this through the existing Public Procurement Act. The state's ability to deliver on specialist services, the bill envisages a broad range of services that are to be insourced. So it generalizes a lot of services. Some of these services, such as IT and auditing, may not be sustainable to insource. And the reason being is that the state cannot compete with private sector salary structures. And for highly specialized skills such as data architects, cybersecurity experts, chartered accountants, the systems in the public service don't allow the state to compete on the salaries. What that will then do is force the public service into salary scales that are likely to require further OSDs. And we know from the OSD implementation processes, this has become quite a challenge in the public service, and it's become quite unaffordable. There are many municipalities that have failed to deliver on core services, on core service delivery functions, and have not been able to replace critical skills that have been lost. An independent assessment, therefore, is suggested to gauge whether organs of state can absorb, manage, deploy insourced workers effectively. In terms of economic transformation and development, one of the state's obligations is to ensure that there is economic transformation and development, and we do so using public procurement. So public procurement forms the bedrock of supporting economic transformation by empowering amongst others, small and black-owned businesses in key service sectors. Therefore, insourcing must be balanced against the state's obligations in that regard, and it must support growth, especially with regard to small businesses, where the services that the bill contemplates is predominant. The large-scale insourcing threatens local, small, and black-owned businesses in cleaning, catering, security sectors, and undermines the state's broader economic transformation objectives. There is an assumption in this bill that the current employees who are contracted in these sectors will be absorbed by the state once this bill becomes an act of parliament. And that might not be the correct assumption, given the value for money considerations, which I'll explain in the later slides, and the hypothesis that government will be able to do this more efficiently. It suggests that greater job losses may occur by insourcing some of these services. Where participants of public employment programs perform the same tasks, this bill will duplicate and substitute those functions. So if you look at the wage differential, which again I'll explain later, it may be substantial because the jobs that are created in the public service in these particular sectors will be at a higher cost than the jobs that are currently created through the public employment programs. And that has while it may be positive, it can also impact the productivity of the public employment programs, as the persons who find it difficult to transition from these public procurement programs will not be able to transition out of those programs. This also raises the reservation wage flow, increasing the cost of public employment programs, and can produce spillovers into the public sector, increasing costs across the economy with no simultaneous increase in productivity. On the state's macroeconomic strategy, one of the drivers of the fiscus at the moment is the public sector wage bill, which is disproportionately high at about 4 percentage points above the OECD average of share of GDP. The wage bill consumes a significant portion of GDP, yet the public sector employment as a percentage of the total employment remains much lower than peer country averages. This indicates that there's a fiscal strain and that is driven by high average remuneration levels rather than headcount. Consequently, ongoing consolidation measures since 2022, I'm sure the committee would have noted that to manage the current wage bill, government embarked on many measures. Some of them included freezing of non-critical vacancies, capping overtime, eliminating performance bonuses, introducing an incentivized early retirement program, and these have been measures to manage the public sector finances. The National Treasury has embarked on a strategy to manage the public sector wage bill in the recent months, and through the incentivized early retirement program with the DPSA. These are deliberate structures to modernize the public service workforce, optimize the baseline expenditure, and alleviate the pressures that the public finances are now presented with. There's a mass insourcing presents a fundamental policy contradiction. So on the one hand, we are saying that we need to manage the headcount, and on the other hand, through this bill, we would be mandated to then absorb and to employ 150 to 300,000 workers to the permanent public payroll on the other, which would cost more than what is currently being outsourced. The financial implications in terms of the public sector employment. Public sector employment is governed by public budget limits and relevant financial management laws. And it is the responsibility of all organs of state to manage their operations and their personnel in an economical, efficient, and effective manner within the allocated budget, ensuring that service delivery and the obligations of the state are not compromised when it comes to its obligations to citizens. The compensation of employees in the public service is significant and growing, and requires careful management. Affordability and sustainability are essential criteria for evaluating proposals affecting public sector employment. Insourcing must be implemented in a manner that is responsible and does not compromise government's ability to deliver basic services to citizens. Mandatory insourcing must not erode the management of allocated budgets, which are currently decentralized, where relevant organs of states cannot manage their operations or their personnel within the budget in an optimal manner. The net fiscal cost to insource workers currently in the public employment programs is the difference between the insourced wage and the benefits package. This is substantial. So the difference between employment in public programs pay 55% of the minimum wage compared to lowest salary level in the public sector, which is about 2.2 times more, and that's excluding benefits. If insourcing requires absorbing workers from the private outsourced market rather than from public employment programs, then government is simultaneously funding public employment programs and a larger permanent establishment with no offset savings. Costing in terms of this bill requires a more detailed analysis of contract level data for these services that are captured under the bill and which are captured under what in financial terms is an agency and support services ledger code, which is the standard Charter of Accounts code. So in departments, in financial statements, you'll find broadly that contracts are captured under SCOA codes, agency and support services. So when departments contract with service providers, they log that contract under that particular SCOA code. What that SCOA code tells you is how much of money has been expended on particular contracts, but what it doesn't do is disaggregate what that amount is really paid for. So when you look at a single item under a SCOA code, it could include the cost of renting specialized IT software. It could include hiring armed security escorts, leasing delivery trucks, etc. So it could include not just labor cost. An analysis of the 2025 information on expenditure in respect of national and provincial government alone illustrates the bulk of costs comes from provinces and is accounting for 71% of expenditure. The biggest contributor, if you look at this slide, is the National School Nutrition Program, which is in provinces, and it includes the administration and support staff of workers, and it accounts for 33.7%, 12.1%, and 10.4% respectively. Insourcing such a service, if not properly considered, will have a detrimental impact on scholars. And we recognize that the bill, as part of the services being insourced, includes catering services, which by implication could include the school nutrition programs. In terms of the SCOA code, which I've explained, it provides reasonable estimates of expenditure towards contracts. And if you look and you base that average unit cost of 584,000, this would allow an estimated equivalent headcount of 32,000 employable people. It must be borne in mind that these figures are not demonstrative of labor cost alone. Like I said, we assuming an overall cost of 584,000, but it's not. While individual departments and organs of state may appear to save the 15% in VAT by shifting these services to an insourced model, there is a zero-sum effect from a consolidated government perspective. What the individual department avoids paying in VAT, the SARS directly loses in tax collection. So there isn't a saving of VAT. Then the bill also anticipates a hypothetical budget modeling. So the bill is premised on eradicating corruption through the insourcing model, and we are saying that when it comes to budget modeling, you can't rely on a hypothetical liquidation of unreasonably high markups or eradicating costs. There has to be a guaranteed quantifiable funding mechanism to expand the state's permanent compensation of employees' baseline. In terms of our concluding remarks, we urge the committee to consider whether it is in fact necessary to have another law, given that Parliament has recently passed the Public Procurement Act and the obligations thereon. The committee is also urged to consider whether the services identified in this particular bill are capable of being insourced taking into account the ability of the state to compete, or the inability of the state to compete with the private sector. We also urge the committee to consider the implications of this bill in light of the macroeconomic strategy to manage the wage bill. We also urge the committee to conduct a line-by-line analysis of what I called the SCOA Code of Agency and Support Services, to conclusively determine across the public administration and not just the public service what the actual cost of insourcing, including the capex, will be. The committee is also urged to consider the financial implications of creating a mandatory one-size-fits-all requirement for the state to employ from designated services, without allowing accounting officers and accounting authorities the ability to manage their finances. The impact of organs of state in managing its personnel in correlation to its operational needs. And again, operational needs are determined by how long you need those services and what the implications of insourcing it on a permanent level is. The concomitant financial resource constraints that may arise and at the cost of service delivery. If the state were, for example, to absorb all of these employees or to insource all of these services, the ability of the state then to manage its health care and all of the other services outside of employment becomes quite constrained. The committee is also urged, and I'm led to believe that the presidency is here to deal with the SEIAS, but as part of that SEIAS, we are suggesting that the committee also look at how do a dedicated assessment on the local SMME ecosystem to ensure and quantify the localized economic fallout and the loss of corporate tax base resulting from the crowding out of cleaning, catering, and security enterprises owned by Black persons, women, and youth, amongst the many. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Treasury. The presentation is welcomed. We now make way for the Presidency Socio-Economic Impact Assessment System, or SEIAS, to do their briefing.
Good morning, honorable members. My name is Pulani Kule from the Presidency in the Policy and Research Services. branch. I've been joined by our senior policy analyst, Mr. Siabonga Maseko, Ms. Letabo Matlala Kalo, as well as Mr. Farelo Majuda. So Mr. Siabonga Maseko will touch on the first part of the presentation, just to give a quick background about the socio-economic impact assessment.
Thanks, DDG. Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members and all the colleagues in the room. My part is to take you through, briefly three quick issues, which is the SEIAS itself, just an understanding what SEIAS is, and also the rationale of the proposed bill as it is, and also the other broader socio-economic issues that the bill needs to consider as it is going to be processed moving forward. So to start, colleagues, allow me to just contextualize the assessment of the bill and also just explain in brief what the socio-economic impact assessment system is and how it will be involved in this process as the bill, as the proposed legislation moves forward. The socio-economic impact assessment system is what we call an ex-ante policy analysis tool. It's a tool that allows us to really think and consider all the factors that need to be considered in a policy before it is finalized or before it is implemented. We do that as part of the socio-economic assessment team. In this process, it is very much supported. We make sure that the process itself is supported by evidence, so that it is evidence-based, and that evidence allows our policies to be strong, and also our lawmaking processes to be strong. So the SEIAS was introduced in 2015 as a cabinet resolution, and the implementation took place on October 2015. So SEIAS, in this context, has just finished its 10th-year anniversary not long ago. And because of that, we had to undergo a process to review the system itself, to say, as it was implemented for 10 years, there is a need. The review showed us that we are busy now trying to revive, so that we strengthen it, so that we make it more effective to save the policy-making space in the country. So the SEIAS is a system, which is the reason why we are here. We apply it to propose policies, bills, regulations, even plans that have those massive macroeconomic issues or implications. So we undertake SEIAS in two phases, honorable members. We have what we call the initial impact assessment. And in this instance, as colleagues presented, there was an element of a white paper by colleagues in DPSA that the proposed legislation will have to produce a white paper. So that is what will come to us during the initial stage, so that we look at the white paper, we look at the evidence and other research that will be done to look at the option, even the existing options. I think the latter speaker made a comment, whether is it necessary to formulate another policy in this regard, or can the existing ones be improved. So during that white paper stage, a SEIAS team will be analyzing those things in relation to the problem. And we also have the final impact assessment. When the framework, which was alluded to say there has to be a framework that will enable the implementation of the policy itself, I think within the first phase that was presented, that framework will have to undergo SEIAS as well, to look at it in the context of the problem that the bill is planning. So the leading department, of which in this case might be the DPSA, or in conjunction with the colleagues in Treasury. So it will come to the SEIAS team again in an iterative process. We'll do the analysis of our policy advice to say, based on what the framework says, this is what we think on the cost, and this is what evidence shows us, or we need more evidence on these issues, and be careful maybe of costing and all these issues, the monitoring and evaluation plan, communication plan that needs to accompany the policy for implementation. So we share the same sentiment in terms of the environmental scan that was done, looking also at the macroeconomic background that was done by colleagues in this sense. So in a nutshell, you can say that the SEIAS offers us a map as a country to say, if we want to move in a certain direction, these are the direction that SEIAS will point to as a map to say, because we have what we call through the SEIAS, the National Policy Development Framework. So that's the one that provides a map to say, these are the direction we need to go. So we'll offer that as well to the lead department to say, consider this as you go through the bill. And then SEIAS then will come in then as a campus to say, for us to make sure that we reach our correct destination, we need to be aware of the true north to say, if the true net is located here and we have the map as the National Policy Development Framework, then SEIAS will offer those advice and the guidance to make sure that we reach the defined stage. We can move to the next one. I now turn to the rationale of the bill as it is currently, in terms of how it diagnoses the problem, and we are in agreement with colleagues who have spoken before us. We don't differ much. The bill responds to concerns about over-reliance by government on outsourcing of recurring services associated with high cost. It also seeks to respond to issues of limited job securities. Of course, this affects the quality of the decent work issues and conditions, and also seeks to respond to issues of exploitation that outsourced workers are going through. And the root causes as well, I think they are well, I think at this stage, they are defined and attributed to the capacity of the state, which is regarded as weak, issues of skills and the mismatch, poor performance, and also poor contract management, as the previous colleagues have alluded to, and also the corruption, tender-related corruption in this instance. The bill in this regard proposes insourcing as a solution to some of the services like cleaning, security, and the maintenance and the IT. And then I've taken note, colleagues have made a statement. But from a SEIAS point of view, all what we are going to do in this process, that, as I've said, that is iterative, will be guided by evidence. For instance, an issue was raised by I think the first or second speaker to say, there seems to be evidence that it might be difficult to procure, or to insource IT services in that regard because of the competitive nature in relation to what the markets will have to match. So all those things during the SEIAS will have to be considered, and with thorough evidence that will guide, so that whenever a decision needs to be taken, it is not taken on emotions and matters other than evidence itself, so that our policies become strong. Now the bill, the proposed bill, it's making strong outcomes aspirations to say that, of course, it is proposed that insourcing is done in line with making the state more capable and accountable, also reducing costs, as I've said, that this will have to be tested, guided by evidence to say how, and then a theory of change during SEIAS will have to provide a guidance to say, will require a clearly mapped out theory of change to say under what assumptions, and question those assumptions to say what must lead to what for all these things to happen. As I now move to the broader socio-economic context, which is linked to the economy and also the labor market in the country. And even there, we concur with colleagues in terms of what they've done to scan the environment and the legislation paradigm that exists in the country as it is. But these are some of the things that, as the proposed legislation moves forward, they need to be strongly considered. When you look at the economic growth or economic development in the country and unemployment issues, the picture is very clear. When you look at quarter one of State SA, the quarterly labor force report shows that unemployment has increased. It's forever beyond 30%. Is currently sitting at 33% in the first quarter of this year. And when you look at the potential labor force, when we add that number to this one, to the official unemployment rate, when we now consider people who have even probably given up to search for work opportunities because they believe that there's no point, it gets worse, it moves closer to 50%. And the issues of youth, very massive. When you look at the need, those who are supposed to be in education, at school, or having some form of employment, they are not even in employment. is very bad when we have a massive number of young people who have no sort of a purpose in life, and they're just moving around without any work or employment or education or training in this regard. When you look at the economic structure, this is one of the components that we have to consider as well. Our economy is service oriented with less activity in manufacturing, so we are not producing things as we need to, so that we can grow the economy and able to absorb jobs. So there's over-reliance as well in the tertiary sector, while agriculture and mining as well, they do not process, as we know. They are still at the phase of providing raw material. And when you look at the community and services, so the community and social services sector, it is the one that employs a number of people. And this we've seen this as evidence in government, in the education sphere, and health and social services, including public administration. That's the sector that absorbs the number of our people. Now, when you look at the state capacity and service delivery, another picture is drawn there. I mean, we know that this is particularly relevant given concerns regarding the increasing reliance on consultants and challenges in public infrastructure delivery. And with the number of audit outcomes, I mean, by Auditor General in relation to the PFMA and the Municipal Financial Management Acts, those things are well documented there in terms of the challenge as well with regards to the outsourcing. So from these elements, that concludes the first part, colleagues, of our presentation. We'll move to the second one, but it's just to stress that we are in agreement, but from a SEIAS point of view, we'll need more evidence as the issue moves to a white paper and a framework that will be developed, so that we engage in that vigorous iterative process with the lead department to give further guidance and policy advice with regards to the proposed bill. Thank you so much, Chair, and thanks, members.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and honorable members. So I will take the rest of the presentation. We looked at also some of the lessons from other countries, but we also looked into what is actually happening in the country. I think members will remember the fees must fall and outsourcing must fall in 2015, where our students, worked in support of outsourced workers to be absorbed. And there, some universities really accelerated that. You have UCT, where they absorbed about 1,000 outsourced workers. UJ, there's also one to learn in terms of how they have done it in a phased manner. And VETS. And I think the comparison has to be expanded also to some of the universities that are not well-resourced. And the key issue is not only about absorbing, but to look into the evaluation, the impact, to say, since we absorbed, have we, seen some efficiency after absorbing the workers. So there are some also interesting case studies in other countries. The city councils in the United Kingdom, where they remunicipalized services. So they initially outsourced your water services, energy, public services, but later brought them back to the municipalities. So you look at examples of Paris, Berlin, where after they've brought back water services to the municipalities, it actually led to reduction of water prices. So those are the impacts that we should look into. So it's not only about absorbing the workers, but also to say, since we brought them back, are we seeing some form of efficiency for that decision? So there are certain lessons that we will also share with members in terms of the impact, what led them to outsource, what were the challenges, and the decision also to insource, and what has been the impact thereof. So we looked also into the benefits and opportunities of this bill. We found that it holds a considerable potential to generate progressive economic gains, and this include employment stability, labor protection, modest reduction in income inequality, strengthened institutional accountability, improved expenditure transparency, and consolidation of state capability. And also by internalizing operational services, the reform may reduce procurement-related risks and reinforce continuity and oversight into public service delivery. Opportunities that might arise, you might even have shared services in the IT and financial and auditing services, so we can explore that. The Auditor General has raised in the MFMA audit outcome where municipalities, actually there is a rise where municipalities are relying on consultants, especially to do their books, the financial statements. But the outcome after using the consultants, they still get, negative audit outcomes. So those are some of the things that we can even centralize. For example, maybe in a district delivery model, you have CFOs for national and provincial to say how best do we support the CFOs in municipalities instead of outsourcing. The issue is that if one municipality asks another one to assist during the auditing period, they will say we are also busy. But we take advantage that we have different financial years cycle between national and provincial. At the time that municipalities are doing their books, the national and provincial government have done already their books, so there's no issue or concern to say, no, we are also busy with our financial statements. It's an opportunity that we can explore instead of outsourcing these services. But also it's not only happening at the end of the financial year. In year also, the issues that have been raised by Auditor General can be addressed maybe through a district delivery model, or even the existing structures that are led by National Treasury or CFO Forum and the like, where it's an opportunity to help. And we are backed also by Section 41 of the Constitutions that all spheres of government and organs in each sphere of government have to assist and support one another. In Section 41, 1H, that we have to support and assist one another in the interest of securing the well-being of our citizens. So we are also backed by the Constitution that we can take advantage of what we have within government to support as opposed to outsourcing. But it can also create job opportunities for citizens who are closer to where they live. So you're reducing the travel and travel time and the costs that are associated with our workers having to travel long distances, and the salary that they get has to be spent on transport. But you also improve work-life balance. So in a practical scenario is that in a particular catchment, you have a clinic, you have a school, you have a police station. So the people who reside around that particular catchment area can provide services to this area, so they don't have to travel long distance. They work, and it also increases the issues of protection of our public facilities against vandalism. We have a history. Certain years we used to have insourced workers who were doing cleaning. Some were graveling our roads. We used to see those yellow trucks, call them GGs. They were always available to provide that services. So I think somewhere we need to go back to say, why did we actually decided to outsource? What were the challenges? And given the policies, the implementation, and is it really that decision helped us to be what we wanted? Did we maybe outsource because we wanted a lean a lean government, a lean workforce, and is it really working? So those are some of the issues that we have to look into. But also not only workers, but the opportunities that come within government. For example, our TVET colleges, we can work closely with them in terms of maintenance of our buildings, with the learners there. The culinary schools, we might not need a full-time service every day for catering, but how do we work with culinary schools, to provide through their students? But also the outsourcing, we need to not only look at workers, but there are certain things that are done internally by government, your correctional services, the research institutions, and we are not actually buying from our own, as government. So those are some of the things that needs to be considered broadly as we look into the bill itself. So there are also potential costs that we looked in terms of the bill. As colleagues have indicated, we need to have a comprehensive cost-benefit analysis and the impact study of the policy itself. There might be concerns of high wage bill when we insource, or insourcing could add more workers. That has been also articulated by colleagues from National Treasury. But also looking at the services, are we inwardly looking, or are we looking for services that are linked to service delivery? Are we concerned about only the cleaning of our offices, security of our offices, but also how does that translate in terms of the skills that we need for service delivery? That we need, data scientists in the issues of data, issues of AI, teachers, health workers, police, and the investment in social and economic infrastructure. What we want at the end of the day is to have more funding for infrastructure that will create opportunities for businesses to create jobs. And also the administrative cost. The bill makes reference in terms of the minister playing a role of oversight, a role of dealing with deviations and monitoring and evaluation. Those are the administrative costs that comes with the bill itself. And even when we insource workers, we'll still have to procure complementary goods and services, like your PPE for our workers and other tools of trade that are needed by let's say security staff, your detergents and the like. So this is currently offered as a package through outsourced services. The possible risk, the micro, small, and medium enterprises who have been providing these services might see it as a threat, but there are other opportunities where they can adapt and diversify to say, instead of only tendering to do cleaning services, we can now start to be suppliers of detergents and other complementary goods that are needed by insourced services. But also the long-term policy implication in terms of if we have to absorb, they have to grow. Our workers have to grow. They have to be promoted. And we need to think about their career progression. And other issues, inability to insource certain skills, competing with private sector. Colleagues have already spoken to that. But also the long term or the forecasting of our policy in the issues around digital transformation. Somewhere as we digitalize our services, we might not have to use physical buildings. Some of our services might be done online, and somewhere are we gonna still use buildings? Maybe they have to be rezoned for other purposes. So those are some of the forecasting, the long-term policy implication. The bill itself will not solve corruption in the procurement, because we'll still have to procure other services that we cannot do as government, but it will not impede corruption on its own. It has to come from different collaborated approaches. There might be also general delays in recruitment leading to service disruption, but we appreciate that the bill has looked into transitional arrangements. But we need to also strengthen that part on transitional arrangements where there might be kind of a panic procurement. We are aware that this bill is coming, and then we quickly do contracting for long term, delaying now the implementation. So we need to have even maybe instruction notes and, to deal with those kind of manipulation, if one may put it that way. So in conclusion, members, the whole work needs to be done, in a proper policy conceptualization. The bill also makes reference to the minister to initiate a policy. So we might have a way of coming up with green paper and white paper to allow detailed discussions, but with research, clearly speculating the socio-economic problems, the policy alternatives, the proposals, cost and benefit analysis, but also an evaluation of how insourcing improved efficiency in organization should also form part of the evidence that we need to look into. And the other important aspect is the policy landscape and the key legislative reviews. There are other existing laws in different forms that are existing, but it's to say what does actually exist in this policy landscape, what is working well, what are the challenges and legislative gaps. So for example, the exploitation of our workers, it points back to say, what is the responsibility of colleagues who have to ensure compliance of our labor relations legislations? Are we enforcing enough? We also have your minimal wage bill. Is it really being applied through outsourced services? The PFMA, the public procurement that is trying to also look into the cost of goods and services, and to say, do we have to improve the implementation mechanism of the existing or come with a new legislation? And also the issues of the custodian of the bill. I think colleagues from DPSA have alluded in terms of the scope of and the mandate of the Public Service Act. Certain institutions, organs of SEIAS are outside the Public Service Act, and it cut across many. And one of the proposals that we put to say, if evidence suggests that we need to come with a new law, probably an omnibus bill will assist. That pulls all the legislation into one, and the reviews that needs to be done. So an omnibus bill can be considered if evidence suggests a new legislation. But also the ultimate question, honorable members, is that the policy debate should move beyond a binary framing of whether we are insourcing versus outsourcing. And the focus is more on how do we strengthen the state capacity to improve service delivery and ensure decent work within a fiscally sustainable framework, and through also some of the initiatives that are happening in government around the public service reforms. So that's basically the presentation. Thank you, Chair, and honorable members.
Thank you very much indeed. The presentation is welcomed. Members, I've had a request for a 5-minute comfort break, which I think is a sensible request. So it is now exactly 11:40. We will continue 11:45. So please use the 5 minutes. Thank you. make their remarks and take part in and ask their questions. We have an hour and 10 minutes left, so I am going to ask members if they can just be considerate towards not perhaps duplicating points that have already been made, if it has been well made, and also try to concisely keep to about 4 minutes. Then we should be good on our time, if possible. I'm not going to constrict debate, but I would assist discipline from the members that we can get through. Give everybody a fair chance to take part in the deliberations. Elise, I think I'm going to give you the first opportunity, and then we can move from her all the way down here as we move through. Okay, no problem. I will then, we can then proceed on that manner. Honorable Letlape, would you like to go ahead?
Please conclude.
Thank you very much. Honourable Ndamase, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. With the understanding that we are just but one portfolio committee, and we still have a responsibility as the legislative arm to exercise oversight over what is happening and is being done by the executive arm of the state. I have few questions. Firstly, to the side of the Public Service and Administration Department. The first question is in relation to their understanding of the state capacity to provide services. Can they articulate their understanding, looking at their presentation as we were hearing from them? And secondly, to the same department, in relation to job creation, what is it that they would like it to be done in terms of pushing forward the challenge that we're having in relation to job creation? Then to Treasury, listening to Treasury, one would say the spirit of the presentation initially is alluding to the fact that outsourcing is characterized as a stopgap measure. Now, if it is so, my question is in relation to the skills transfer when it is being employed. From where they are seated, are they able to give an account to say that there is this measure of the skills transfer which must be a supposition in every time that the outsourcing is being done? Then looking also at the notion of the economic transformation and development that they've articulated in their presentation to Treasury, which one thinks about wealth distribution? There is a report that was issued by the World Bank in 2022, which characterized South Africa as the most unequal society in the world. Then my question would be, from the economic transformation point of view, what could we be able to say went wrong in relation to that articulation that is done in that report from where they are seated? Then the last comment is looking at the fundamentals. Three of the presenters, I would like them to comment in relation to that, in relation to the economic fundamentals. We have been unable to reach 3% of the economic growth. Is there something wrong with our economic fundamentals as the country? If yes, what is it and what could be done? Is there a challenge? That's my last point. Is there a challenge with our industrial strategy? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honourable Malinga, please proceed. Honourable Malinga, if you don't mind perhaps going to Honourable Ndamase that we can use the... I'm afraid then it might not be recorded properly. It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. It's being streamed. Yes. Thank you, Honourable Malinga. I appreciate it.
Hey. It means, no, it's fine. It means today, the wrong person sits next to me today. So that's why everything is not working. But nevertheless, thank you, Chair. Because of time, let me observe the protocol. But let me acknowledge the presence of the DM in our midst. We really appreciate it because the minister is always absent. We really appreciate your presence, DM. Someone is provoking me here, but I can live with that. Let's appreciate all presentations from TPSA, Treasury, the presidents. We really appreciate your presentations. Surely, presentations was loud and clear. But for me, Chair, today, I'm not going to dwell too much in terms of the questions of clarity and so forth, because my understanding is that this is a working document. So it's our duty on top of the bone to put some meat, veins and blood and so forth. But my understanding was that all presentations, they partially do agree that there is a need of insourcing, but there are some issues that we need to deal with. Maybe, Chair, from DPSA, I will start with Section 198A in our LRA, subsection B, that is stating the period of the employee when he's working on that particular department, that what is their plan in terms of deeming those employees as the Labor Relations Act subscribed. That one. Then going forward, mine, Chair, for now will be a proposal in terms of discussing this bill, where I believe that if we will have a joint meeting while DPSA is here, we invite COPTA, the portfolio committee that is dealing with labor, and the unions at large, so that we'll discuss this insourcing versus outsourcing at large. Lastly, Chair, taking into consideration with all presentations that were presented to us today, I just want to check from, especially from DPSA, that the issue of those employees that are in the outsource department, what mechanism do they have in terms of trying and make sure that exploitation doesn't occur during the process in those employees? Maybe, Chair, let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Langa, please proceed.
Oh, no, thank you very much, Chair. And again, greetings to the DPSA, National Treasury. I think I mistakenly left out the Presidency when I was adopting the, proposing to adopt the agenda. And the DM. Let me, Chair, also welcome the 3 comprehensive presentations by the 3 legs that are with us here today. Chair, maybe let me first clear the air here on the minister. I'm not the spokesperson of the minister, but no, I'm speaking as a member this side. It's fine, you do your ministerial input, but the correct word, the correct using of the words is very important. You know, when you say always, there's seldom, you know, you need to be careful on how you choose those words. The reason I'm saying is that on the previous physical meeting we had, the minister was present. So I'm saying to my colleague, you know, he must just check with his words in future. So I'm not speaking on behalf of the minister, the deputy minister. So having said that, I have a concern, but nevertheless, I think the people who've sponsored the bill have the presentation, the representation. The previous meeting we had when they were to introduce the bill, you know, I think they came in full house, you know, and then it's quite concerning then when today we have these three important presentations from the Treasury and the Presidency and the DPSA, there's only one member. So it's quite concerning. Babu Vugela, I have a few questions for you. Because if the whole team like that came, those who've sponsored the bill, and when we are deliberating or discussing this, it will have helped having them here as well to clear some areas whereby we are not really clear, you know. So, Babu Vugela, I'll be limited to a few questions, having raised those concerns. You know, if you've prepared, you've prepared. So it's important that one goes ahead for the sake of the business of the day. So can I just check, Babu Vugela, if should the government first develop a comprehensive policy framework on the insourcing of services before introducing legislation, or should the legislative process precede the development of such policy? And if possible, on the response, please do substantiate on the preferred approach. And what measures should be implemented to ensure that the bill does not create duplication or overlap the constitutional and legislative mandates of other executive authorities and organs of state? And the last one for Babu Vugela, what steps is the government taking to reduce dependence on the outsourced recurring services where such functions could be performed internally? Then to our learned money guys, the National Treasury. Could maybe the National Treasury provide an evidence-based cost analysis of the outsourcing of government services and assess the financial implications of achieving the objectives envisaged by the bill?
Please conclude.
How, Chair? How many? How many minutes?
You're on 5 minutes or longer. But I'll allow you if you want to just finish.
I missed that allocation.
Okay.
Are there existing policy or legislative or implementation gaps that government can identify and address by drawing lessons from the provisions and objectives of the Insourcing Bill? and then to the Presidency. Could maybe the Presidency elaborate on the finding contained in slide 7 that the proposed reform holds considerable potential to generate progressive socio-economic gains and provide the evidence supporting this conclusion? And based on the available cost analysis, what are the estimated financial implications of insourcing services? And to what extent is government expected to realize savings or incur additional costs as a result of the proposed reforms? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honourable Spes, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me to appreciate the presentations and all protocol observed. Chair, I think a common thread throughout this whole exercise and through all the presentations is a question that arises with me is that how do we avoid a situation where, as the government, we expand our headcount without addressing the underlying issues that we have, which is of poor management, weak accountability, the lack of consequence management that has actually contributed to outsourcing in the first place. That to me is a common thread or question that needs to be asked. I want to start by, with reference to the Minister of Finance's letter that we received. And in that letter, the Minister very clearly states the existing legislation, like the LRA, the Public Service Act, and Municipal Systems Act, and the Public Procurement Act, which we know that it already regulates employment, protection, and procurement. And so I would want to understand what evidence is there that another piece of legislation is necessary, and how will the bill avoid creating legal uncertainty and overlapping mandates? Yes, it's been touched on, but when one sponsors a bill, these are the questions that one needs to expect that will be asked and that needs to be responded to. Then my next one is that in the current financial situation or the current fiscal environment that we are currently in and where most departments are in, municipalities are struggling. They're struggling to fill critical vacancies. How would government then prioritize funding for insourced positions over the frontline services delivery posts? For example, such as teachers, healthcare workers, police officers, and social workers. Then the next one, could the implementation of the bill result in job losses in the private sector? Yes, I'm sure. If so, has the Treasury quantified this risk? And what transitional arrangements would be required to ensure continuity of services during the migration of from outsourced to insourcing? Then I want to ask the sponsor of the bill if they have undertaken a credible costing exercise, and where will the funding come from, given that government is simultaneously freezing vacancies or posts, offering early retirement packages, and attempting to contain the wage bill. And with regards to the private sector and SMMEs, has an impact assessment been conducted on the jobs that could be lost in the private sector? And how do we foresee this bill aligning with government's commitment to supporting small businesses? I think I have covered all my questions, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Honourable Pulwane, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. Maybe let me join my colleague by passing the greetings and to everyone in the sitting, our DM, our guest, Deputy Chief Whip, and the team that you are leading, and also the Department of Public Service, the National Treasury, the Presidency, honorable members. Chair, firstly, let me join my colleague by welcoming all the presentation. And I don't have many questions, it's only few. Maybe let me start with the DPSA, because the ANC has pronounced in its Lekgotla 2026 the exploit best cases scenario to insource model and reducing the tendering by 70 to 30 ratio by 2031. My question is, do we need the additional bill for insourcing if we have legislative prescription which allow it? And then the next one is the security and cleaning services are designed as high risk. What specific operational metrics will be the Department of Public Service and Administration use to determine if the department is ready to manage thousands of new internal employees by the 2026/2027 deadline? That's all from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Kaba, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. Greeting, Chair. Greeting the honorable members, Deputy Minister, Honorable Pinky Kekana, the DG of the DPSA. All protocol is observed. Chairperson, let me start by the DPSA. The DPSA is initiating a comprehensive white paper process and ontetics attempt at systemic reform, or is it a political strategy to stall the bill's implementation and gamble the 50 to 30 billion fiscal impact down the road? That is the DPSA, Chair. In the Treasurer, the presentation briefing suggested that a new law may not be necessary because the Public Procurement Act of 2024 and the Amendment Labor Relation Act always address corruption and worker vulnerability politically. If current anti-corruption legislation and the procurement system were fully effective, why do extensive corruption in the tender system and administrative failures in outsourcing persist as key drivers for this bill? I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Honourable Mutan, apologies for my pronunciation.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. I will start with the National Treasury. Chairperson, the presentation warns that mandatory insourcing could collapse the local SMME ecosystem, especially the ones that are affecting enterprises that are owned by women, youth, and other Black people in general. How does the government balance its structural economic transformation and preferential procurement goals with its parallel constitutional obligation to ensure that fair and decent secured employment are being put directly to the state payroll? Chairperson, National Treasury have a lot of legislations and policies that are assisting in different spheres of government. I agree with members that are saying some of their policies are really killing other institutions, especially local government. Not local government, National Treasury is very strict. I agree with their policies when they are implementing it. But I have a feeling that sometimes they are lenient to others. I want to make an example. There is one municipality in the Free State where National Treasury gave approval of outsourcing the electricity to private ownership or whatever. When you look at the contract of that municipality, it's a contract for 25 years. Where on earth you can see a municipality being part of a contract for 25 years? That municipality is Mafube municipality. That entity is working outside the municipality. They don't meet the management of the municipality. They don't meet the council. They are just working there in their corners. I think more than 70% of the revenue of that municipality previously was from the same source of electricity. It's now privately. And then when you come to other budget processes or approvals that you are doing in National Treasury, you will come and say, we are giving this grant to this municipality for specific things. Then that grant must not be used for something else, of which is understandable. But really, when you look back and check what is happening in that municipality with some of the approvals that are done by National Treasury, don't expect that municipality to function properly because of some of the decisions that National Treasury is part of. I just want to make an example of some of the policies that you are implementing and decisions that you are taking. My second question will be in the DPSA. The DPSA recommended permanently including specialized IT and auditing services from insourcing due to corruption risk. How does the department justify leaving the most lucrative historical corruption-prone tender sectors out of anti-corruption bill? My last two questions will be to the presidency. What will be the most appropriate approach to phase out the outsourcing of basic services such as cleaning, security, gardening, and ground maintenance, while ensuring that those workers are protected from exploitation by service providers?
It's 5 minutes.
My last one.
Yes, please go ahead.
Chair, it will be good if the members who sponsored this, if they were present, a majority of them like they did before, so that they can answer in some of the questions. But we are available going forward because what we are doing today is a work in progress of this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Male Matya. Apologies.
No, you are forgiven, sir.
Thank you very much, member. Please proceed.
No, thank you, Chair. Let me follow suit, join in the queue in welcoming the three presentations led by the DM, capable DF for that particular matter, forever present to face the storm. In you, we have invested a lot. Chair, let me borrow from Presidency when they put it clear that this does not need to be rushed. I think it was influenced by the fact that our own economy is very fragile, economically proven for that particular matter. And of course, because we are led by the African National Congress, with a lot of visionary leaders who were able to see that come 2030, some proposals and bills that can be sponsored might be taken into course. I think if one can take that into consideration, one will not necessarily need to panic and understand that we live in a world where the population is growing. Anything that can be implemented recklessly, just deliberately ignoring the fact of the fiscal burden that has been proven mathematically of 30 to 50 billion per annum, then the question is, where are we going? So I think around that, Presidency has provided a very good presentation that questioned us. And I think they are influenced by the baseline information of the existing bills and the bill itself that need to be, that is being sponsored, that those who are sponsoring it, a carefulness of some sort, if not a precaution, has to be exercised, rather to sometimes throw for electioneering. At the end of the day, we collapse the state that we intend to save. Because it has to deal with the overlapping legislations, if we are to be specific. Will the bill be desirable if the overlap has hindrance, if to be specific, to the functioning of the other legislation, the chair? Also to deal with the threat on the existing entrepreneurs, because they are there. To deal with the existing entrepreneurs, that in terms of the baseline information, is us who created them. Now it's us who want to wash them away. Unless if you lack a vision of some sort, that will do. And I want to agree that corruption can't be on the basis of the existence of the current bill. Corruption is a tendency, it's a habit that all of us, we must fight it. So you can't produce or sponsor this bill, then at the end of the day, you think it has the existence of bringing the corruption there. Then I think Treasury were very much helpful when you deal with the fiscals. Now, the debate around this, it must not be a hollow general statement. It must be mathematician proven statements that will assist to say, how do we balance the current and being able to be ready for future? Because if we are going to deepen these two, want to please the current, it means we are not necessarily having a vision of 2030. So, Chair, where I am, I think I will stand by the presentation of the Presidency to say rushing will collapse the state. But thorough calculation of the move might assist, not necessarily replacing for the sake of replacing. I'll end there without even going deeper. Instead, just put that political statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Honorable Nkambale, you are most welcome.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and good day to honorable members, DM with your team, National Treasury, and the Presidency amongst our midst. One chair is going to start by joining honorable members who have welcomed the presentation. It is indeed empowering and very comprehensive. It assists us as honorable members as we try to navigate this governance framework. Hence, it is a very complex environment. I think it's very important for me to firstly indicate before the House that the African National Congress generally supports the principle of insourcing essential and routine governance services. It has been in our political discourse, it's not a new phenomenon. We started it, we are still navigating it, we are still checking which models can we implement as we move forward, because we need to be clinical in our approach as we do it. It should not be something that is going to compromise the future generation, because whatever policy and legislation that we take today, it is going to impact to the future generation. So that's why in our approach, we are moving in our pace and scale that we can afford as the country. Rush is not going to help in this regard. But to clear the matters, it is the principle and the policy position of the African National Congress. I'm going to start with the DPSA chair, just to ask one question in relation to slide 28. My issue is that, Chair, the bill addresses real and constitutional significant issues, but is fiscal infeasible and operational unachievable as drafted, which is as per the presentation tabled before us. It then translates to the fact that the bill seeks to oblige organs of the state to employ workers from private companies, which raises legal and implementation consideration in relation to the prescribed public service framework. My question in this regard is that in terms of the laws of natural justice, the absorption of private contract workers bypasses the fair and open competitive public service recruitment framework. So as the state, as we try to navigate, hence we said we are going to do it in phases, how are we going to insulate ourselves as the state, or the state, you yourselves, DM, from lawsuit, hence the high levels of unemployment in the country? I know that you know that currently the unemployment rate is sitting at 32.7%, with youth sitting at closely, together with women, 61%, and in terms of the expanded definition of unemployment, sitting at 43.7%. Because if then we then come to that stage of doing it in phases or implementing it in phases, those who are not currently in unemployment are going to then raise issues to say, how about us? So I want to get a sense, when we do it in phases, how are we going to deal with this matter, because it is very important. The second question, Chair, is on the National Treasury. I'm going to have those two only. The slide 6 on the National Treasury presentation, and the title was the state's ability to deliver specialized services. I just want to get a sense from the National Treasury, hence they argue that highly specialized skills such as cybersecurity and SEIAS may be unsustainable, bearing the fact that these form the baseline budget fundings. You have made, I understand, reference to difficulty in competing with the private sector, and also that you cannot afford, I'm not sure whether is it based on remuneration packages or stuff, but I assume. So I understand that, I assume that maybe there are some studies that you have conducted. What lessons have you learned from international case studies regarding the reinstatement of insourced public services, with specific focus on reliance to outsourcing versus insources, especially focusing on the specialized skills? Those are the two questions. However, the presentation is clear. We really accept it, and it is empowering on our side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Khilese, that brings us to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think before I start, Chair, I was about to be offended, right? When I hear certain members, questioning where my colleagues are today. But I'm not going to do that, because I then realized that the political organizations where they come from, they don't believe in giving responsibilities to women or young people. So in the EFF, that's what we do. We deploy young people and we trust them with, issues of this country, like the issue of this Insourcing Bill. So they must not look, at me and undermine. I'm the main member of this committee deployed by the EFF. I'm equal to task. So, Chair, our duty as sponsor of the bill is to address policy concerns. But with all the presentations that we heard today, it is not clear what the legal issues are. I tried to listen to all of them. There is nothing tangible I can say, the legal issues that they are bringing to the table that is concerning them, what it is. But I want to stress to all of them that we will remain available to clarify issues with you, even in writing, if there are any outstanding issues. But they must specify and say, these are the, the policy concerns that we can deal with. Another clarity I want to bring forward is that the bill does not say they should not be outsourcing, but it says that the insourcing must be prioritized. The Act sets a criteria for outsourcing. So the clause states that the minister must develop the insourcing policy. And, because I can ask any of them, what is the criteria for outsourcing? I don't think any of them can give me a response to that. So the bill does not conflict with any existing legislation, because they will have to give us and say, this is the legislation that it is in conflict with. And none of them have said that, because we believe that there isn't such a legislation that is conflicting with this bill. And Treasury keeps saying that there's no need for another law, and I would like them to point us to where outsourcing is in our current legislation. Because when you're saying that there's no need for another law because it's already catered for, like, can you point us to where outsourcing is in our current legislation now as we speak? Because we confirmed with our legal team that there is no clash. So if they're saying that there is a clash, I think it's something that they can bring to us, and then we can clarify that with them. And maybe, Chair, now dealing with the legislations, I would like to start with DPSA. So the DPSA report is a serious challenge to the bill, but I do appreciate that they are not in total rejection, right? I think importantly, as I was listening to them, it does validate the diagnosis by the EFF while criticizing the solution designs. I think importantly, Chairperson, the department agrees with the EFF that the problem is real. Their own data supports our narrative that, there is a lot of corruption and exploitation. They also say that the bill is too expensive and unachievable, but they didn't present a plan to fix the almost 500 billion lost in corruption or the current 18 billion wasted on outsourcing. Because when you want to argue things like that, you must, come with a plan that is fixing the current problems that we are facing. The department claims that the bill conflicts with Section 217 on procurement. However, Section 217 also requires a system that is fair and transparent and equitable. And a system that fosters corruption and exploit workers right now, we can hardly call that fair. Treasury, admits that the budget can't be traced properly because agency and support is one big box. But then I ask a question, how can they then oppose insourcing when they don't even know what money is really being spent on? How do you do that? You know, they say insourcing costs too much, but there was an AG report here that found this 406 billion lost on corruption and irregular spending. If the government stopped the tender theft, surely there would be enough money to pay workers a decent wage. How is it that they are not concerned that our people are not being paid enough, that they don't have security? They come up with problems here instead of solutions, where they should be fixing, where there is a problem, and come up with solutions so that our people can receive a decent wages. And what I don't understand with Treasury...
Maybe you're now on 5 minutes, but I will allow you leniency.
Thank you, Chair. You see, President Ramaphosa has declared war on outsourcing and agrees that government should outsource what it cannot do more cost effectively. Why is it that Treasury, every time that the president pronounces on something, they come and say there's no money for it? Because we were dealing with budget votes here not so long ago. And you have a president that spoke at SONA and then says, deliberate on issues that this and this and this is going to happen. And when that needs to be implemented, you've got a treasury there that is telling us that there's no money, when their own president of the country has pronounced on this issue. So we've got a president that declared war on outsourcing, but we've got treasury who's telling us that there's no money for that. When a president, what we expect from them is that when a president speaks on something, they find money, they make sure that that thing that the president spoke about is implemented, not them telling us that there's no money. Are they saying that President Ramaphosa is not aware of what is going on, what can be done and what cannot be done? So they say that the wage bill is too high, but I don't understand. But the problem is top-heavy salaries. It's not the head count. This bill insources the low-paid workers. So we're talking about the cleaners and the security guards, and not executives earning a million plus. So I ask a question about why is this a threat? Why is it a threat? Who's benefiting from this thing? And who are they protecting? Why is it that they don't want this thing? Because it's not their salaries. They earn, more than a million plus there. So when they don't want this to happen, why do they not want better for the people? Maybe that's the question we should ask them. Why do you not want better for the people? Why do you not want these people to get the salary, the full salary? Because, Chair, you see, if it was a private sector and they were allowing brokers so that they were allowing brokers so that they don't pay their staff fairly and good salaries, would say it's exploitation. So we've got a government who's supposed to be a model here, is doing exactly the same thing to their staff. What do we call that? Why do we have a government that is doing that thing? And maybe, Chair, as I conclude, so government says that the bill is complex, but COSATU, their ally, is agreeing and supports this bill. So if Labour and the EFF agree, what is a real reason for the hesitation? I would like to understand from them, because their allies are saying, which is Labour, they agree with the EFF to say this bill is good, and there's a hesitation and people pushing back from their side. What is their excuse? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Member. If I may ask DPSA to go first, we'll go in the same order. Deputy Minister, you're most welcome to first make a remark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thanks to our honorable members of this committee. Maybe just to deal with the issue of our minister, there is no intention by Minister Buthelezi to undermine the sittings of this committee. And it is always an arrangement between me and him that if he's got other pressing issues, like now, there's an African Public Service event that is also responsible for APRM and all these things. So he's got those responsibilities to deal with. The important thing is that there is no vacuum. We are here. So that's what is important. The second issue is to the honorable member of the EFF. We are in no way going to undermine the participation of young people in the committee. But a noble arrangement is for the proposer of the legislation to at least be part of us and understand where we stand as different government departments. We are not undermining your capacity, but we thought Honorable Mautwe, because she is the person who's introducing this, to also be part and be able to hear what the presentations are. However, we are mindful that this is recorded and the EFF and all members of the portfolio committee will be able to even go through some of the things and write to us as different government departments. Chair, I'm going to broadly deal with all the issues that members raised, but there may be specifics where departments may want to. Okay, there's a hand there.
Albert Kalise, is there a point of order?
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, DM. I just maybe this is what I should have done. I hear you, DM. Honorable Maodwe is part of the impeachment committee, which is sitting at the same time as us. So that's why she's not here. Thank you very much. Chair.
Apologies noted. Thank you very much.
You see,
DM.
that's very important. That communication was very critical because we will think she's not taking the committee serious. So yeah, Chair, maybe let's and I will be responding on behalf of the team from Treasury, from Presidency, and from the DPSA. But where you think there may be issues, where we also need to take care of some of the things, you'll be able to come through. And I want us to move from the premise that was set by Honorable Dr. Letlape, which has been the spirit of the Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, that outsourcing cannot be a permanent feature, especially on services that we know structurally form part of service delivery. If we take health as an example, whether we like it or not, we need people in the cleaning services for doctors to be able to attend to patients in a clean environment. We need eating or catering services in hospitals because patients must eat. So it's not something that is temporary. It is going to be always there as a service to give support to some of the clinical services that are happening in a hospital. So I put that as an example. But also, all the offices in government, in whatever thing we are doing, we need clean environment, whether from garden services, whether from offices and so on. So it means cleaning services will be a permanent feature in government. And that's the premise where members of parliament of this portfolio committee are moving from. Now, the big ask you are making, which the DPSA presented, to say in the past 3 years, provincial and national, this has been the cost just on cleaning and security services. Remember, we have not done an in-depth analysis on some of these things. We took on a desktop. Researchers will tell you what they do, but I will just use, doctors are here, both Dumsan are here, they will tell you what they use. But I'm saying, now, if one of the things that we needed to do, which Dr. Letlape speaks to, it's the 5,000 rand versus the 12,000 rand in the 18 billion rand that we are projecting to you. And if you look at that with the head count and the benefits, what are the unintended consequences? I hope I'm not misquoting you. So we're looking at those things. And that's the analysis that Treasury can look at and then say, okay, let's use the past 3 years' expenses on outsourcing in cleaning and security services. And then say, ideally, if Pinky get this tender, this is how much she's paying to a security. Or if she gets this tender, this is how much she pays for the security. But ordinarily, out of this is the amount of profit she's making, and so on and so on. But if we take that profit and then look at a comprehensive benefit for compensation for this ordinary person, what will that translate into, and so on? So those are the nitty-gritties that you want to look at. That is why then SEIAS come into the picture. Because SEIAS look at the environmental impact analysis, the unintended consequences that certain things may bring, and the benefits and the cost of some of those things. So SEIAS looks at that. And they are saying, look, we're looking at that. We know the president has said, let's do away with outsourcing on certain things, and. But then SEIAS comes back and say, we're looking at this and the implication of the bill. There's one unintended consequence that the bill brings into, which then takes us to a possibility for a white paper. SEIAS says there's national, there's provincial, the bill goes to local, and it goes to SOEs. So some of the things are touching the outside mandate of the Minister of DPSA. So how do we synchronize some of these things and make sure that when we look at outsourcing, we look at not public service, but public sector? So those are the things that all of us should look at. So certain legislations govern local government, certain legislations govern SOE, certain legislations governs national and provincial. And that's where the overlaps then comes into. So allow, nobody amongst us says we're not reaching out to this private members bill. No one is saying that. We're only saying there are other unintended consequences or blurry lines that we also need to clarify. And then we think the white paper approach, which SEIAS is talking to, can help us, because in the white paper, we'll cut across those fears and be able to say, here's a scenario, how do we deal with it? So we'll go into the jugular vein of the whole thing, from national, provincial, local, and even our SOEs, and then say, how do we then look into this thing holistically and respond to insourcing of certain services. Of course, informed by the budget allocation, informed by how we want to deal with the issues of unemployment and creating opportunities and all these things. And even coming to the issue that the chief whip, the deputy chief whip raised, that insourcing does not automatically says you are now going to absorb everybody without looking at competitiveness and whatever. And we can't say yes or no. But we need to engage on some of these things and say, what will be the best approach without us creating hoo-ha in the country when that insourcing now happens? Because there's quite a number of things, and we know it may even touch on CWP, it will even touch on EPWP, it will touch on quite a number of things that you're doing. Because if you talk garden services, if you talk all those things, public works also outsource EPWP, local government through COCTA, they outsource CWP, and all of them speaks to billions. How do we deal with that? Ordinarily, like the deputy president of SANCO has just said, it can't be something that you rush. It must be something that you make sure that you have ticked all the boxes and make sure that certain things are dealt with accordingly. And that is why then SEIAS says this is an omnibus bill, because it touches on different government departments and all other things. So, yeah, I thought those are the things that we look into. Of course, there are specific things that members have also raised. What are the lessons learned, and how do you deal with some of these things going forward, especially on specialized services and other things? And I can confidently also speak because I'm a former mayor of the district of Waterberg. In small municipalities, like SEIAS was saying, Pulani in particular, the DDM model says if you are a district and certain smaller municipalities cannot afford to have these guys, audit committees and so on, it becomes a shared service that a district then appoint and then help municipalities to deal with that. So those are the kind of things on how do we then designate shared services, how do we make sure others help those who cannot be able to afford, and so on and so on. So I'm just saying to members, yes, the outsourcing is a structural feature of service delivery rather than a temporary arrangement. So we now need to drill deeper into it and say, which are those services that we can now migrate from being outsourced to being insourced? And the white paper process is going to help us to deal with that and eliminate overlaps and make sure that ministers or departments that are affected come together and align and help in this thing. And in that way, Treasury will also, through an evidence-based approach, then show the financial implications, the costs, the savings, and what does that mean? So it's not about us looking at headcount and saying we're bloating public service. In any case, those people who are being outsourced, we are indirectly have appointed those people through the service that we are giving. They may not be on our wage bill because we have outsourced that, but ordinarily they benefit through public service. So it's those kind of things that I'm appealing to members, and take it as work in progress. We'll be guided by the team going forward, but we want to really come to the party and make sure that we deal with what is confronting us, levels of unemployment, eliminate exploitation of our people, but also deal with the issues of corruption, whether perceived or real, and then deal with issues of contract management because that also has an element of bringing certain things that are not palatable. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Members, we are now at 1 o'clock. The DPSA and the Presidency and Treasury still have not, the Deputy Minister, I think, did cover a lot of it. Can I just see, is there anything vital that any of the entities would like to add? Treasury, thank you.
Yes. No, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to honourable members and everyone in the House today. All protocols observed. Thank you, DM. I think you covered us fairly well. I suppose maybe just from the Treasury's perspective, just to say that Treasury in itself, we don't have anything against insourcing. And I think it was even mentioned in Renisha's presentation there. However, I want you to draw your attention specifically to what the President has also said, and I quote, government should only outsource that which it cannot do itself more cost effectively, with the emphasis on cost effectively. Now, rightfully so, I think the DM also has indicated we have some work to do. So what it essentially means is the Treasury, we need to do some evidence-based analysis. And I think even the honourable member said, of course, the agency and outsourced services is broad. So what it means is that we would need to go into that and unpack or unbundle that to give us a better idea or better sense of what the actual cost in terms of that would be if we were to insource similar services. And maybe just also to highlight, I think from our preliminary investigations, we feel that outsourcing is still the cheaper option. It is more cost effective, and that is essentially why we do have an allocation for outsourcing. However, like the DM says, we can probably go back and we can unpack that, and we can look at the different costs involved. But without having to repeat what the DM has already said, I think we note some of the comments and we do take the points. And of course, we will obviously go back and do some more analysis in terms of that. I'm not sure if my colleague wants to add anything in terms of legislature, or you covered. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Treasury. Members, I just referred to the point about the minutes, which we did not deal with. I would like to ask that we quickly just deal with the minutes of the 4th of March. It's been handed to you. DM, just give us 2 minutes. It'll be quick. It'll be quick. Members, you have the document in front of you. It's the minutes for the 4th of March. It is part of this legislative process. That's why it's important that we adopt it now in this session. Masi, would you mind just taking us through it page by page, and then we can ask for adoption?
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon, honourable members. These are the minutes of the 4th of March, 2026, Chairperson. We were dealing with the bill, Chairperson, where we were receiving comments from individuals that had supported the bill, Chairperson. I am on page 1, Chairperson. These minutes were also submitted via email, Chairperson, to members, and were also sent to the WhatsApp group so that members can just have a look and see if they are the true reflection of what transpired on the day. I'm on page 2, Chairperson, where we had Kosatu and Satao on the day. I am on page 3, Chair. And I'm on page 4. These are the minutes that are related to the Insourcing Bill on the 4th of March, Chairperson. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the for the assistance. Members, can I see a hand for the adoption of the minutes for the 4th of March, please? Honorable Namase. Thank you very much. Can I please see a seconder?
I second the chair.
Honorable Kaba, thank you very much. Members, with that, the minutes for the 4th of March has been duly adopted. It also brings us to the end of the session. And I would just like to say in closing that, you know, I think the spirit of the bill really has a lot of commendable outcomes which it wants to achieve. And from my perspective, I think we should perhaps look past ideology, if I can put it that way, and just say practically what delivers the best service for the people of South Africa in terms of the government's, the constitutional duty that the government has to deliver any one of those services, and what is the best way to do that. And that we must ask ourselves at all level and all spheres of government at every time. Thank you very much, members. The meeting is adjourned.